More than 2 years after the US withdrew from the Iran nuclear agreement, Tehran is now openly violating that deal with a resumption of uranium enrichment to 20%, far above the limit agreed to in the deal. Iran's parliament passed a law last month to boost enrichment, also to block UN inspections if sanctions were not lifted. Also comes 1 year after the US killed Iran's top general, Qasem Soleimani. Separately, Iran seized a South Korean flagged tanker off Oman, claiming it was polluting Gulf waters. South Korea has sent a destroyer to the Straits of Hormuz, and diplomatic efforts are reportedly underway to try and secure the release of the tanker and its crew. Live to CNN senior international correspondent Sam Kailee in Jerusalem with more on this. Okay, so they're talking about diplomatic efforts to try and get this resolved. But then you also have this military operation underway with troops and ships being sent to the region. Is that just might to back up the diplomacy?
Well, I think the short answer to that, John, is absolutely a bit of a gunboat or aircraft carrier diplomacy coming from the United States, who had ordered the Nimitz aircraft carrier group to return to home base. That order was rescinded. It's now been told to remain lurking in the region to reinforce threats, frankly, from the United States and also from Israel. That Iran will not be allowed, in their view, to develop a nuclear weapons capability. Now, this latest announcement from Iran has provoked the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to repeat that threat. And the threat has no particular power behind it in terms of they haven't revealed what they would do if they were to get to the stage when they decided that Iran was nuclear capable. But it is the absolute horror story for the Jewish state and as a strategic nightmare for the region. It's perhaps for that reason that Saudi Arabia and Qatar have begun to put aside their very acrimonious differences, and the Qataris will, for the first time in several years, be attending the Gulf Cooperation Council meeting in Saudi Arabia today after the Saudis ended or agreed to open their borders, both air and on land and at sea, to the Qataris. Of course, those two nations both looking across the Arabian Gulf or the Persian Gulf towards Iran, and very, very anxious about these regional tensions that periodically ratchet up and ratchet down as a consequence largely of the United States withdrawal, as you mentioned there, John, from the so-called JCPOA, the nuclear deal that was supposed to get the Iranians to set aside their nuclear program in return for a lifting of sanctions. Since the Trump administration left that and went for a campaign of maximum pressure, we've seen an increase in tensions. And as you rightly point out, this is pretty close to the anniversary of the killing of Soleimani, General Soleimani, the head of the Quds Force of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, who was responsible for what the Americans and Israelis and others would describe as Iran's destabilizing operations in the region, in particular Syria and Iraq, but also, of course, in the Yemen. So none of those tensions have gone down through the Trump administration. There is a sense here that everybody's just holding their breath until the Biden administration can get back into power and perhaps de-escalate and return to real diplomacy. But at the moment, things are pretty tense.